welcome you to gentle yoga, and for the people watching later on the YouTube, welcome to gentle yoga on YouTube. So I have a couple of yoga blocks. I'm going to use those later, so I'm going to have those nearby. And I'm going to use a yoga strap today. If you don't have a strap or blocks, you can use other things that are similar. A scarf, a belt, a dog leash works pretty great. Anything that is sturdy enough that when you pull on it, it's not going to get too stretchy, and it won't break, right? So as long as it's long and you can use it, that'll work. If you have a blanket, we're going to start with a little shoulder opener using a blanket. Move my water out of the way. So you can also use yoga blocks for this. And if you're using yoga blocks, you just want to position your body so that the block is higher up your back so that your shoulder blades rest on it. If it's too low, it'll poke in your spine, and that's not very comfortable. But if you can get the shoulder blades, those big bone resting on the block, it usually will hold the pressure so it doesn't go into small little pokey areas between your ribs. Now, if you have a blanket, fold it a couple times. So I'm going to fold this so the fringes are together as neat as I can. The neater you fold yoga props, the more comfortable they are. So take the time to fold them nicely. And then I'm going to fold it so the fringes are now touching, and then I'm going to fold it together so the raw edges are all together. And that is where I'm going to begin. Now, if you are very sensitive to back bendy shapes where the chest is lifted and the shoulders are back, then you might want to roll your blanket from the longest edge and just roll it up as neat as you can, and then kind of level it out. If you are, if your back likes to be in that shape, you can fold this one more time so it's a little thicker and roll it along the edge. So now you'll wind up with a little bigger shape. Now, it's just up to you as to which one is going to be right for you. Now, you're going to lay this down, and then we're going to lay the spine on the blanket. Again, the blocks would be positioned so that your head and shoulders are supported. This can come further down the back, and I'm going to put my back on this so that right at the end of the blanket is about where my lowest ribs are. These little floaty ribs down in the low back are going to kind of go right at that point where the end of the blanket is. Okay. So you just kind of position yourself so that you can find a way to lay back. Now, this is designed, this little pose with the blanket is designed to help the shoulder drop into its natural position. Often especially if you spend any time on your computer or a sewing machine or anything where you kind of lean forward, the shoulder wants to go forward to stay, in that shape. So what we're trying to do is let the shoulder drop back into its neutral position. And there's not a lot of sensation around this. You won't feel a stretch, but it's going to do its work just nicely. So we're going to keep the arm bone relatively close to the body. I'm not holding it. It's basically just, if I were standing up, where would my arm want to go? And then I'm going to just let that shoulder drop over the edge of this blanket. Now you can have your legs straight. You can have the feet resting on the floor. Some people like to knock the knees together. That creates tension in my inner thighs, and so for me it's better just to have the legs sort of hanging out if I'm going to do that one. Or you can put the feet together and drop the knees open. That's a bigger stretch for your inner thighs. I'm going to go for straight legs. And you decide for yourself. And then we're going to hang here for a little bit, about 5 minutes, just breathing and relaxing so that we can retrain the deep stabilizer muscles here in the shoulder. Just to give us a little bit more space, a little bit more of a neutral shoulder position. Try to let your face muscles relax. The forehead and the jaw and the the lips are all soft, the eyes are relaxed. Letting the breath drop as deep as I can without straining. So just letting the belly kind of float with the inhale. And then I'm just kind of imagining myself relaxing a little deeper with the exhale. For about just a little bit longer than 30 seconds longer. Take a big breath. Let go with a big sigh. And then we're going to take ourselves off of whatever we're on. So whether it's your 2 blocks or your blanket, just slide that out from under you. Come back onto your back and notice what happens. So when I use a blanket like this, it feels a little bit like there's like a little impression left down the center of my spine. It's almost like there's a little blanket still there. But one of the things that's most interesting to me is it feels like my shoulder has dropped back a bit. So I don't feel it while I'm in the pose, but when I'm done, I definitely feel a little bit of a difference in the way my shoulder touches the ground than I did when I first laid down. So it feels like the top part of my shoulder has dropped back into the floor. And that is quite pleasant. So you can just pause for a second. Now, I'm going to do little windshield wipers with my legs just to rinse out any tension that might have loaded around my low back or sacrum. And then we're going to do a deeper stretch with the chest muscle, the outer hip, and it's a spinal twist as well. So you can pick your legs up and bring them over and rest them on the ground. Now check out what happens. So if when you let your legs rest, the shoulder comes off the floor, you're going to add a little bit of support underneath. So I'm going to take that same blanket that I had, and I'm just going to pop that right under my thigh, and that lets my shoulder come all the way to the ground. Then to get the extra hip stretch, I'm going to hook my top leg over, okay? Then I want to stretch out through the arm on the side where on the opposite side. So my legs are going to the right, so I'm going to stretch my left arm out until I feel a stretch through the chest muscle. And I kind of want to feel it as close to the end of the breastbone and the center of the chest as possible. If it feels like it's really gripping on my arm bone part, on the arm bone side of things, then I'm going to take just a moment to kind of readjust my arm. It might need to go a little lower. It might need to go a little higher. So I want to feel that little chest muscle stretch without it feeling like I'm pulling my shoulder out of alignment, okay? You might need more support under the legs, so you could use a block or something else like that as well. then we're gonna breathe. Nice deep breaths. Relax into this for a bit. You can try to make a little bit more room between your hip and your rib cage if that seems appropriate. Kind of let the legs drop down a bit. Take a nice big breath. And then we're going to take this top leg back to the center. Take all that pressure away. And then take your arm and just give it a little rinse. And then you can do this little back and forth if you like as well. And then notice how the arms feel in relationship to each other. Notice how the hips feel in relationship to each other. So I would swear to you that my left hip is closer to the ground than my right hip. If I put my hand here, it's not. It's totally not. But it feels a little more relaxed around the outer part of the hip. So that feels kind of nice. Alrighty, so we're going to take the body into the opposite twist. When you're twisting or side bending, it's always a good idea to give yourself a little bit of time in between sides, because the spine moves fluid across the different layers of our discs, and so it just gives it a chance to kind of redistribute that fluid. Okay. And it feels nicer. So I'm going to use the blanket again because I used it on the other side, even if I may or may not need it as much on this side, but this side is usually tighter for me, so I'm going to assume that I'm going to need it. So I've dropped my legs over to the left, and then I'm going to experiment with where my right arm should go. And again, I want to feel the stretch across the chest without feeling anything land in the top of my shoulder joint. And then I just want to make sure that my hip feels like it's an okay position. I'm not pulling on my low back in a funky way. So once I find that, I'm going to turn my head this way in a second. But once I find this, I'm going to, again, pause. Let the body breathe nice and deep. The exhales kind of fall out. The inhales are nice and big without a lot of strain. So just pause, breathe, let everything kind of gently release. Take a nice big breath, and then we're going to travel back to the center. Again, just take a moment. You can give that arm a little shake out, and give the legs a little movement. So we're going to do some work for the shoulders. I'm going to leave my legs in this kind of constructive rest / bridge position where the feet are rested on the floor. You just want to make sure you've got your feet positioned so it feels like the legs relax. So if you need to lean your legs together or even stick a block between the knees and lean the legs into the block, you're welcome to do that. Now, we're gonna take the arms up so that they reach up toward the ceiling. And what I'm gonna try to do is pick my shoulder blades up off the floor without lifting from my neck muscles, right? So I'm gonna let my head rest. So because I'm letting my head rest, I'm gonna take my blanket, unfurl it, and put it underneath my head. So it's just a little bit more supported. And I'm just putting it right underneath the head so it stops right at the base of those little ridges on the back of my skull, occipital ridges. Okay, so I'm gonna lift up and see what that does is it just like my head kind of falls back a little bit. So I'm not pushing it back, but I'm letting it just adjust. And so the blanket just gives me a little bit of softness underneath my little bumpy skull. All right, so we're gonna reach up towards the ceiling and then put the shoulder blades back down. Reach up towards the ceiling. You should feel the shoulder blades slide off the edges and then they come back down kind of into the floor. Reach up, let them come down. Reach up, let them come down. My spine is not leaving the ground, just the shoulder blades are coming up and around. One more time. Reach up, come on back. All right, so now you're gonna grab elbows. Now, one arm is on top, and in my case, it's my right arm. So just remember which one it is for you. So we're gonna reach up, so the shoulder blades come to the outside. Then we're gonna take the arms as high over the head as they'll go, and then keep reaching all the way back to that neutral position, okay? Or like up, straight up and down position. So going up over your head as far as they'll go. If they go all the way to the ground, awesome. If they don't, no worries. Come on back. No one's getting the medal here. We're just gonna go up, over the head, kind of reaching up and over. Come on back. And then one more time, keeping those shoulder blades nice and lifted around the edges. We're gonna go up and over. They're gonna change positions, and then we're gonna come back to neutral. Now switch which arm is on top, and we're gonna do the same thing. Lift, take the arms overhead. There could be a difference when a different arm is on top. Come on back. Good, relax. Lift, take the arms all the way up and over as far as they'll go. Come all the way back, let the arms relax a bit, okay? Two more. Lift, take the arms up and over. Come all the way back, let them drop in. Last one, lift, all the way up and over. Come all the way back, and then drop them back in. We're gonna release the arms. Put them down for just a moment. Just feel what happened to your shoulder blades. Notice the upper back, anything that kind of wraps around towards the front of the shoulder. It's just interesting to feel. So I have this really pleasant warmth in the muscles on the upper part of my back and around to the back of my arm. It feels really lovely, a little bit light, and just nice. It's very pleasant. The front part of my shoulder has a slightly different sensation. It's not unpleasant, it's just a little different. So I'm just noticing kind of how that goes. All right, I'm gonna leave this blanket here and we're gonna roll onto the side. Now I'm gonna scoot just a little bit back because I might need a little bit more room. I don't know if I'm gonna leave the leave the screen view. So I'm gonna take my blanket, fold it up so that my head feels like it's supported in a relatively neutral position, okay? So for me, that just means folding it and then letting my head rest, right on? Just kind of tucking it in. Okay, so my head is neutral. My arms are sticking straight out in front of me. Hopefully I'm in the screen enough for you to see that. And we're gonna take the arm and travel with it. So the top arm, this is my left arm. This is gonna be my traveling arm. My right arm, the one that's on the bottom, is gonna be my stable arm, okay? So it doesn't matter if you're starting on the left or the right, it'll be fine. We're gonna do both sides. My hips are stacked on top of each other. I have my knees bent for stability, all right? So the left arm is gonna go up over my head, and then I'm gonna reach all the way around until I get to about the point where it almost is like my arms are making a T shape with my body, and then I'm just gonna sweep it back to the start. So reach up and over all the way to that point, and then bring it on back, okay? Stretch up and over, try to reach out through the chest muscle as well. And I'm not rolling all the way onto my back, so there's a little bit of resistance, but I'm also giving my shoulder an appropriate range of motion, okay? 3 more times if we can do it. Nice long stretch. Coming on back. Up and over, nice big stretch. Oh, come on back. One more time, I think that's right. I think I counted, okay? If we got a bonus round in, no worries. So now we're back to the center. We're gonna take this top leg and we're gonna lift it a little bit, straighten out both legs. Now the top leg, we're gonna wanna put the toes apart and the heels together for a moment and then just resuspend your top leg. You can bend your bottom knee for more stability. Leave that leg straight to make it a little more challenging. This is gonna work our core and it's gonna work our outer hip. So we're gonna circle the leg. If your core is really jiggly, hug the sides of your waist in and you can put your left arm up in front for stability. So one more time in that direction. Now we're gonna take the feet, bring the toes closer together, the heels apart. Now we have an internal rotation. Again, you can let the bottom leg rest and then we're just gonna circle the leg, try to hug in through the sides of your waist to stabilize your torso. Ooh, and hopefully you can feel how we're working the muscles in our outer hip. I feel it. I hope you guys feel it. Good, one more time. All right, so now we're gonna bring the legs together. We're gonna roll back onto our back, but before we go, we're gonna take just a moment to take that leg across. Then when we roll onto our back, it's in position so we can put the ankle up on top of the thigh. So my right leg is bent, left leg is positioned here. This might be all that I need today. If I want a little more stretch, you can bring the legs in towards you. And I like to give myself a little back massage while I hang out here. Oh, so I'm just stretching that same little area of my hip that I was just torturing. I like the combo. Torture the muscle. Oh, make it feel better. It feels nice. And that shoulder on my left side feels really lovely. Nice, warm, kind of easygoing feeling in that shoulder joint. All right, so we're gonna stay here for about another, I don't know, 8 breaths or so. If you're getting tired of holding your legs, you can definitely just rest your foot on the ground. Take a nice big breath. And then with your exhale, we're gonna let everything kind of fall back to the floor. We're gonna take that leg off. We're gonna give everything a little shimmy. Oh. And then notice, does your left side feel a little longer than your right side? It does for me. Again, it probably isn't longer. All right, so now I need my blanket again. I'm gonna scoot a little bit. Hopefully I'm still gonna be inside the camera view field. All right, so I'm rolling onto my other side. I'm gonna position the blanket under my head. You can use a block here as well. Okay, so my neck feels neutral is what I'm going for. Right, and then my right arm is now the arm on top, and I'm starting with my knees bent for stability, okay? So I'm gonna take this right arm, go up and over, reach out nice and far, and then bring it straight back. Reach it up like a little rainbow shape or an archway. Stretch it out there. We're gonna do it 3 more. My right arm is usually a little bit tighter, so I really like to linger at that right about there all the way to the end because it feels really good. I'm going to do it one more time. Oh, bring it back. All right, so now we're going to straighten out the legs, and I'm going to just turn the toes out. Bottom leg is going to stay resting, but the top leg I'm going to keep the toe turned up. lift that leg up a bit, hug in through the side of your waist on both sides, and circle that leg. It doesn't have to be a big circle, but it can be if that is a good challenge for you. Okay, so pause for a moment. Again, we're going to lift the legs and put the toes together now. Drop that bottom leg. Keep this internal rotation on this leg, and then we'll circle. This one for me is a little bit harder to stay stable because my hip doesn't do this movement quite as easily, so I have to hug in a little tighter through the side waist to maintain that stability. 2 more. Last one. Beautiful. So now again, we're going to roll onto our back, but before we get there, we're just going to kind of pull this leg up on top, and then we'll roll onto the back so that we are in this little butterfly, half pigeon, whatever you want to call this shape. Upside down pigeon. So we've got that, or you can bring the leg in. We'll give ourselves a little snuggle. Again, we're going to stay for a little while. There's a little hybrid idea that you can do, which is that if you take your yoga block, I need to turn mine up so I've got a good height to it. You can rest your leg like that. So you get the leg lifted, but you can also be a little bit lazy if you want to be. I like to be, for gentle yoga in particular. So I'm feeling that shoulder nicely relaxed. This is the primary reason that it's nice to do that with the legs, is because you can let your shoulder relax. So we're going to do about 4 more breaths. So we're gonna let this whole thing go. Give yourself a moment. You can unwind your legs. I like to stretch mine out, give them a little jiggle. And then just for a moment, pause and see, does your body feel like both legs are about the same length? As best we can do anyway. And then are the shoulders feeling mostly relaxed, arms about similar? Doesn't have to be totally symmetrical. We're not necessarily going for that as a goal. This is really about just noticing the kind of changing field of sensation in the body as we do different poses. And there's a couple of things that are happening there. One is we're learning from our practice what's right and what's maybe to be avoided. And 2, we're building the neural pathways for interoception, which is the body has a couple of different ways that it works with nerves. So most of the time, the central nervous system, the spinal cord primarily, is sending signals out to the muscle, and so the muscle acts, right? That's how we have movement. So it sends signal from my spinal cord out to my bicep to contract and release, right? So the triceps contract to make that happen. Contract, right? So that is a signal coming from my central nervous system outwards, and so those signals happen all the time. That's because we're always reinforcing those every time we move. But the other part of the nervous system, there is a signal that comes from the muscle or from the outer body back to the brain. And those go all the way to the brain, particularly around the brain stem. And so, because that's, the nerves live in that area. So we're coming back from the body to the brain. Now that is called interoception, and those pathways are the same nerves that are responsible for our ability to relax. So when we reinforce those pathways by paying attention to the signals that are coming from the body to the brain, we pull those signals deeper into the brain, so it's not just a limbic situation, and we reinforce our ability to consciously relax and shift into that parasympathetic nervous system. This is a powerful thing to be able to do when you're stressed out. So we're reinforcing that work. That's all I'm saying. Letting you into the science, baby. All right, so we're gonna bring ourselves to a seated position. You might need a few moments laying on your side. If you get dizzy when you sit up, definitely lay on your side for a few moments. Now we're gonna do a bunch of things seated. We're gonna start with just a simple cross-legged seating position. I make that sound easy. It's not for everyone. So some of us sitting just cross-legged on the floor is really quite challenging. So you can sit up on a pillow. That usually makes it a little bit better, or a folded up blanket. Or you can even sit on a yoga block. They're just a little pokier, so a little bit more of an edge to them. Now, when you sit on a blanket or you sit on a pillow, what you're gonna do is you're gonna sit so that the edges of your sit bone are right on the edge of the blanket. Rather than sit in the center of the blanket, sit on the edge, and what that will do is it will elevate the back of your pelvis, allow your spine to curve more neutrally, and it will be more comfortable to sit that way. Often the knees will drop a little closer to the ground. Now you can certainly experiment and see what's right for you. I could be wrong about your body, but generally that's a good idea to have. So once you're seated, it should feel like your spine is in a relatively neutral position. So it doesn't feel like it's rounding back. It doesn't feel like it's being pushed forward. It's, you know, like you're standing up, okay? Hopefully. There might be postural issues, but we'll work with those on another occasion. So we're gonna let the arms relax in some way. I like to rest mine palm down on my thighs because that gives me the best sense that my arms are relaxed. And then we're gonna work with our neck. So we're gonna drop the chin and just notice, did that pull you forward into a slouch? If it did, bring your spine back to neutral. And then let the back of the neck sort of just take a moment with it. Just a little side to side. Are the muscles that connect to the skull to the shoulder blades tight? Okay. If they are tight, we're gonna linger with them a little bit. So we're gonna take the head like over to the left and then pull the right shoulder blade down. You can even reach the right hand back and to press that shoulder blade into the back and down to give the back of the neck a little bit more stretch. And sometimes it even helps me to tilt the head a little bit in different positions, rotate a little. So there are two muscles that are responsible, oh, that feels good, responsible for stabilizing the skull on the spine, and one of them connects the shoulder blade to the skull. And so that's what we're kind of working on right now, is that little stabilizer muscle. It's referred to, if I might not pronounce it correctly, but it's called the levator scapulae. The muscle that levitates or lifts the scapula, the shoulder blade. It's a stabilizer muscle for the skull as well. Okay, so now I'm gonna bring my arm back and I'm just gonna check in and see. Yep, so now both sides of my neck feel a little bit softer and I'm not getting any feedback that suggests that that's a tight area. So now I'm gonna roll my head up and over and start to notice all the other muscles along the side of my neck. So I'm gonna come back, roll up and over. Now there are lots of muscles in the neck, just a heads up. Some of them are just muscles that connect like the neck to the skull, or, you know, like there's all kinds of little muscles that live in the side of the neck, all kinds of reasons. But there, again, there's a stabilizer, not just in the back, but there's a stabilizer in the front. So we're gonna kind of take a little trip into that muscle. So I'm going to start with my left side. So my head's over on the right side. Now the muscle that I'm talking about connects the skull. So it goes up past the jawbone, kind of under the jaw, and to the skull, right in this area behind the ear. So it connects the skull down to the collarbone and the breastbone. So this muscle is called sternocleidomastoid because it goes up past the jaw. So we're going to let the head tilt back, and I'm going to take the collarbone down. And I'm going to try to get the collarbone to go down and slightly to the left on my left side. So I can feel that stretch through that big band of muscle. It's fairly wide, right, down here at the bottom, and it gets narrow at the top. See if you can kind of feel that width. Sometimes for me, like a tiny little jiggle gives me a little more sense of that muscle. Good, so one more big breath here. And then I'm going to take the shoulder blade, or the collarbone, just bring it back to a softer place, and then I'm going to let my head come back to the center. And then notice. So I definitely feel a difference. So this side feels a little softer, a little bit warmer. It's a nice pleasant sensation. So I'm going to go for the other side. So I'm going to roll my right, or drop my chin, roll my head over so the right side is in the stretch now. And I'm going to try to find that position of my head where I can really notice that muscle. And again, I'm going to take the collarbone out to the side and a little bit in to give it a little bit of extra love right there. Because of the way it connects, sometimes for me a little bit of movement and then a little bit of stretching and a little bit of movement and a little bit of stretching works best. Last breath here. And we're going to relax the shoulder, put the arm back, bring the head back to neutral. And then notice both sides of the neck. Like, does it feel like your head is able to kind of find a nice neutral position, chin about level, shoulders relaxed. Okay, one more thing. We're going to hunch the shoulders up and then drop them. Punch them up, drop them. We're just going to try to release any tension that might have been left behind. Good. All right, so now we're going to take the legs out of this position. We're going to take them out wide, give them a little shimmy. I'm going to get a drink of water. This unicorn drink holder came in the mail last week, and now I feel compelled to use it. All right. So we're going to take the legs out wide. So the hips should not feel like they're overly compressed at the hip joint. So if it feels funky in one of your hip joints, bring your legs a little bit closer together, see if that's better. Some of us, when the legs go out wide, it feels like the pelvis drops back. So again, you can sit up on the edge of a blanket. For me, the issue is that the backs of my knees are a little bit sensitive. So I use the blanket under the knees. And you can do this with pillows too. So when the knees are bent, it might be a better sensation, and you're able to get a little closer to the front edge of your sit bones, or it might be an elevation in the hips is going to be better. So you just find your way in. Now we're going to side bend over one leg. I'm going to go to the right first. So if you want to, you can bend your left knee and let that knee hang out bent rather than keep it straight. So that's up to you. So rotate and then side bend. And then once I'm here, I'm going to play with the side bend. So I want to lengthen out my side waist, but I could also turn a little bit so it gets more into my back muscles, or I can turn a little bit so I feel it more in the front of my abdominals, okay? So I'm going to explore that range of sensation and muscle movement. And the neck and head we're just going to work with. Some people might want to put a little support under there. So if you find a sweet spot, stay in your sweet spot. See if you can get both your sit bones just to be heavy. It's not a big deal if they're not heavy. Take one more big breath here. Now we're going to come up and pause for a moment. Now, we're going to twist towards the opposite leg. So I bent over my right leg, I'm twisted towards the left leg, and then I'm going to fold forward over it. You can leave it bent or you can have it straight, that's up to you. Straighter leg, more hamstring stretch. Bent knee, less hamstring stretch. More other things. There's no really wrong answers in yoga, there's just the answer that's not right in the moment. See what happened. Like, did your sit bone come off the floor? What happens if the sit bones get heavy? You might like it better off the floor. I like to vacillate a little bit of movement. If I push my sit bone down, I feel more of a stretch in my low back. If I let it get softer, I feel less of that. Okay, last breath here. I'm gonna come up, inhale up. You're gonna lean back, bring your legs to the center, maybe bend the knees, I like to do that, and then do some little windshield wipery moves. out there, yogis. Hopefully you're good. You can always give me like a little, if you want a signal that life is good. So we're coming back to the wide legs. Makes it feel like we're more together. Again, I'm gonna side bend. This time I'm side bending to the left. So you can bend your right knee if you want to. If you're going to the left, I don't know which way you're headed. So whatever is the other side. So again, reaching the arm up into the side stretch, or you can keep the arm out of it, that's up to you. And then I like to do this little bit of a roll between the front and the back. Now you can find just one little spot and stay with it. For me, it feels nice to explore this whole, I don't know, that surprises me. I'm liking that so much. See, this is why you explore. Sometimes you think you know what's good, and then you find like, hey, that's pretty nice today. Right in there. I don't know why that feels good, but it does. So finding a spot now maybe and staying for 2 breaths. We'll come up. Take a moment. And then we're gonna turn towards that leg. And again, you can leave it bent or you can straighten it out. Turn towards that leg. So I was side bending left, I'm going right into a forward bend. And again, you're gonna decide like how much into this forward bend should I go? I'm gonna let myself fall forward as far as I can and then kind of press the sit bone down just to get that little extra bit of shift. I feel a little bit more around my low back, which sometimes is good and sometimes is too much. You gotta feel it out, yogis. Sometimes I don't know until later. Such are lessons often. Okay, so we're gonna take a big breath. Come all the way up. I'm gonna lean back, bring the legs together. Oh, and maybe bend the knees and do the windshield wipers. Okay, so we've done some left side, we've done some right side. Now we're gonna do something that's more symmetrical. So you can go back to the V, or you can come to the bent knee position. I'm gonna go for the bent knee, like butterfly shape, because I did a straight leg on both sides, so it's feeling kind of nice to change it up. So I moved this blanket close to my ankles. What that does for me is it gives my knees a little bit of a break because it supports my shin bone, and so it doesn't feel like there's a disconnect between my thigh and my shin. For some people, it's going to be better up closer to the thighs or even right under the knees. Now, once you've decided how you're going to do this, lift each sit bone up and just kind of let them go back behind, and then we're going to fold over. So where was I? Oh yeah. We're just holding steady with the breath for a little bit longer. Big breath. We're going to float ourselves all the way up. We're going to lean back, unwind the legs. Okay, yogis. So give yourself a little rinse. So one of the things I like to do after some of that is I like to move my spine a little bit. So I'm going to come back to just a cross-legged seated position. You can stay with either this position or even the butterfly if you want. Both work. So we're going to do this little cat-cow shape movement. Go forward, come back, go forward, come back. Okay, so we're gonna do that one more time, and then we're gonna try a little side to side. So I'm gonna come back and try like ribs to the right, ribs to the left, ribs to the right, ribs to the left. One more time. Now I'm gonna try to put this together in a little bit of a flow. So I'm gonna go forward with the ribs, come to the side, wrap it around, come to the side, push it forward. And so, I hear these called Sufi rolls. Unfortunately, that makes me think of sushi rolls. So I'm trying to come up with a different name for them, but I haven't figured it out yet. So we're going around, push it forward, come around. shift forward, come around. So one more time. When you get to the back, stop and go the other direction. So rib cage is moving forward and back, and the pelvis can just follow along. I'm just trying to initiate this action from my ribs. One more Sufi roll. Going around. When you get to the back, just pause there. All right, that usually feels really nice. So we're gonna do a couple of lungey shapes. If you like, you can keep your blanket, you can keep your blanket to have underneath your knees, so there's a little bit more softness. What you doing? I have a companion who is checking me out, but off camera, so you guys don't know. Oh, here she comes, okay. So I'm gonna put my knees on this blanket, and then I'm gonna take my blocks with me, and then I'm gonna take one leg forward. Doesn't matter which one. See, I'm gonna have to move my little my little guy, because otherwise it's gonna get taken. So I'm gonna take the hips forward, and then I'm gonna take the hips back so I get a little bit of a hamstring stretch. Right on. So hips forward and hips back. Okay, one more time, hips forward. Now, if you can, just pause right there. You can bring your torso up so there's a little bit more to the stretch. They are not the most helpful coworkers, but they're awfully cute, so we let them stay. I haven't fired them. I don't think I could anyway. Pretty sure they would still show up for work. Take one more breath here. And then we're gonna back the hips up and fold over the front leg as much as it makes sense to go. You can slide your foot a little further forward if you don't feel anything. But if you feel something, that's far enough. Just stay right there. Okay, now we're gonna take this leg and sweep it back. Now, I'm gonna lose my blocks for a second. You can keep yours, because what I wanna do is take that leg all the way back behind me and then reach my opposite arm in front, hug in through the sides of the waist and give it a good stretch, okay? So we're gonna, it forces us to use our core to stay stable. So do your best if you can to stay right there. If you need to put your hand down, just come to the fingertips, but try. Last breath, and then we're gonna come down, okay? Now, you can do some little movements. I like to feel both hips, see how that went. And then when you're ready, bring your opposite leg forward. Cutie. Oh. Okay, so then the hips are gonna shift forward, and they're gonna shift backward. I'm gonna shift them forward, and for me the right side is a little bit tighter, so it's a little more sensitive. Left side, hamstrings. So into the hip flexors, and then into the hamstrings. Now I'm gonna go into that hip flexor stretch, that lunge, and then I'm gonna bring my torso up, so I've got a little bit more sensation there. I'm telling you. Breath. Okay, so we're going to come back down and we're going to ease our way into the hamstring stretch. Oh, that's nice. What's up, Teddy Wees? Take one more breath. And then we'll just take that leg. So again, I'm going to come down to the floor with both hands. I'm going to try not to get into any trouble. Sweep that leg back, reach the opposite arm out, hug in through the sides of the waist. Hang out with that spinal balance. take a child's pose for a moment. Oh, if that's your jam. We're gonna come back to laying on our side, and you can use the pillow or your arm, either a blanket or your arm, as a head pillow. So I'm gonna use my arm and a blanket. Now this is where the strap might come in handy, because we're gonna do this. This is sometimes referred to as the sleeping Buddha, because I don't know if you've ever seen those statues, but they're statues of the Buddha laying like this. I don't know where where they've decided this thing works. This is also sometimes referred to as Vishnu's couch pose. The Hindu god Vishnu has a couch made out of a giant snake. So that might be more apropos. So in any case, we're gonna bring one leg up, and you can hold onto your big toe if that's better, but you can also hold onto a strap. I find the strap helpful. So we're gonna engage through the bottom leg. You can bend that knee for more stability. And then we're just gonna see, like, where does the stretch? So for me, there's a little bit of inner thigh and a little bit of hamstring, but it tends to center more in this inner area, whereas the stretch that we did in the lunge was more on the outer part of my hamstrings. So I like that contrast. Now again, we're trying to stay as stable as we can, head nice and relaxed. We're just finding that stretch wherever it happens to land. It can be a wee bit wobbly. All of my coworkers are up right now. So we're going to take 2 more breaths with this guy. Now, I'm going to let this leg go with my exhale. I'm going to straighten out. I've got to turn all the way around. Oh, that feels so amazing. I hope it felt good to you guys. So you'll see my back, but hopefully you get the idea. So I'm gonna roll. I'm gonna support my head. I'm gonna get my leg into position. And then extend. And again, I can keep this leg bent, or the bottom leg can be straight for a little bit more challenge to my core. And I'm gonna hug in the sides of my waist and try to stay as stable as possible. So some of us, our leg is gonna wanna go forward because that's our range of motion. If that's the case, and just double up on the core work to kind of help hold you stable. And of course, you can bend that knee. A hamstring stretch and a little core piece all at once. All at once, y'all. It's a win-win, I say. Nice deep breaths. Again, you might need more room so it's not quite so intense. I like to experiment, but sometimes I knock myself over. So we'll take about 4 more deep breaths. Nice big inhale. Let go with a sigh. Alright, so we're going to bend the knee, and then we're going to let that leg come down. We're going to roll onto our back. Oh, I don't know if you know this, yogis, but it's time for Shavasana. What? How did that happen? How did an hour go by already? I don't know, yogis. I agree. Seems crazy. Anyway, it's not. It has been an hour. So I'm giving my head just a little back and forth. I'm letting my head rest in this blanket. And then just kind of pulling it with my hands, my arms. So it gives my neck a little release. And then I adjust the blanket so it feels really nice. My head and neck feel nicely supported. Then I'm gonna put a pillow under my legs. You could use blocks or another blanket, whatever you got. Oh, throw pillows work magnificently if you've got some of those. And so then we're just gonna relax, yogis. Now, you might be tempted to skip this part because nothing is going to happen. It's not very exciting. Don't skip this part. There's a lot going on in the world right now, y'all. There's a lot of anxieties and a lot of unknowns and a lot of things that they're impacting our nervous system even if we don't realize it. And this pose is all about letting the nervous system completely relax. Right? So we can slide into the more restful part of our nervous system, our parasympathetic nervous system. So we're going to consciously relax all the muscles. So again, the muscle is sending signals to the brain, and we're going to let the brain help us, right? We're going to relax the mind. Relax all the muscle. So when our fight or flight muscles let go, especially at the hip, it can send a signal to the rest of the nervous system, like it's okay, you can let go. Facial muscles are also important, so relax between the eyebrows. Let your eyes get a little heavy in the sockets. Relax your jaw and all around your lips as well. You might have to revisit it and relax it again later, but just check in right now and let everything get soft. Just another minute, but take a moment while we're here and just come back to noticing the breath. Notice if you can feel the breath through your whole body. Take a breath so deep you can feel it to your toes. Let it go with a sigh. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Stretch them out. Wiggle them again. Stretch them out. And then you can do wrists and ankles. In both directions. Give your whole body a stretch. We're gonna pull it together here, yogis. roll to our side. If you need to take some time there, take some time, and then when you're ready, you're gonna sit yourself up. So thanks for taking a few moments out of your day, well, okay, it's more than a few, to join me for gentle yoga. Let's take a big breath together. Nice big inhale. And a big sigh. Welcome to the rest of your day. Namaste.